afternoon.
Dober dan, lep popoldan.
Thank you very much for the beautiful music.
Hvala za čudovito glasbo.
It prepares us to keep listening about God and nature.
Ki nas pripravlja, da nadaljujemo z našim poslušanjem o Bogu v naravi.
And also that wakes us up a little bit after this wonderful lunch that we had.
In nas tudi malo zbudi po tem dobrem kosilu, ki smo ga imeli.
Can I know how many of you were on Ljubljana on Thursday when we had our lecture there?
Ali lahko vprašam, kdo od vas je bil v Ljubljani v četrtek, ko smo imeli naše predavanje tam?
Great. So this afternoon we are going to go deeper in some of the topics that we touched briefly in Ljubljana.
Danes popoldan se bomo poglobili v nekatere od tem, ki smo se jih na kratko dotaknili v Ljubljani.
But for the rest of you, don't worry, you're going to understand everything.
Ampak ostali ne rabite skrbeti, vse boste razumeli.
So we are going to talk about the protein factory.
Danes govorimo o tovarni proteinov, beljakovin.
Intelligent design at the cellular level.
O inteligentnem načrtovanju na nivoju celic.
It's going to be a little more technical than this morning.
Mogoče bo bolj tehnično, kot je bilo zjutraj.
This morning we talked about animals.
Danes dopoldan smo govorili o živalih.
Now we are going to talk about cells and molecules.
Zdaj bomo govorili o celicah in o molekulah.
But I will try to make it as easy as possible.
Ampak potrudila se bom narediti vse, kar se da enostavno.
In the 19th century,
v 19. stoletju,
people, at the beginning of the 19th century, people still believed in a spontaneous generation.
So ljudje še vedno verjeli v spontaneous
generation, yes, living, appearing from...
Spontano nastanek življenja. Hvala.
And when Darwin proposed his theory of evolution,
ko je Darwin predlagal svojo teorijo evolucije,
people thought that living things, simple living things, could just appear.
So ljudje mislili, da se preprosta živa bitja lahko preprosto pojavijo.
Because they saw that from rotten food sometimes little worms appeared.
Ker so videli, da iz hrane, ki je gnila, včasih pridejo majhni črvički.
There was even a recipe to make mice.
Bil je celo recept, kako izdelati miš.
With wheat and wet clothes.
Kako uporabiti pri tem pšenico in mokre krpe.
And leaving that there for 20 something days, then some mice maybe appeared.
Potem pustite to tam 20 in nekaj dni in mogoče se pojavi kakšna miš.
It made sense that people believed things like that.
Seveda je smiselno, da so ljudje verjeli takšne stvari.
Because the microscopes at this time looked like this.
Ker mikroskopi so takrat bili videti tako.
When they looked at cells, what they saw was just this.
Ko so gledali celice, so videli samo to.
Little balls.
Majhne kroglice.
Little bags of liquid, murky.
Majhne delčke tekočine.
So they thought this is very simple, it can just appear.
In preprosto mislili, to je zelo neka enostavna, preprosta stvar, ki se lahko pojavi.
When microscopes improved, then you could see that cells had different shapes.
Potem, ko so mikroskopi postali boljši, ste lahko videli, da imajo celice različne oblike.
And then some of these bags of liquid had some other bags inside.
In potem so imele te vrečke s tekočino znotraj sebe, nove vrečke.
But they still looked quite simple.
Ampak to je bilo še vedno precej enostavno.
Today, it's completely different.
Danes je to nekaj povsem drugačnega.
We have electronic microscopes.
Imamo elektronske mikroskope.
When you look at a cell through an electronic microscope, this is what you see.
In ko pogledate celico skozi elektronski mikroskop, vidite to.
There are lots of things in there.
Veliko stvari je v njej.
There are different compartments.
Različni deli celice so.
And we know that in each of them different things are happening.
In vemo, da se v vsakem od teh delov dogajajo drugačne stvari.
This is a real picture.
To je dejanska slika.
And this is an illustration of an animal cell and a plant cell.
To pa je ilustracija živalske in rastlinske celice.
Some of the compartments are the same,
Nekateri od teh delov celice so isti,
but some others are different because animals and plants do different things.
spet drugi so pa drugačni, zaradi tega, ker seveda živali in rastline delajo drugačne stvari.
So, for example, in the plant cell, we have a green compartment to make photosynthesis.
V rastlinski celici imamo zelen del, kjer poteka fotosinteza.
And in animal cells, we don't have that, so we cannot live from air and water and sunlight.
Potem v živalski celici imamo druge dele, ki omogočajo energijo iz vode, svetlobe in zraka.
If you could make yourself really, really tiny,
Če bi se lahko zelo, zelo pomanjšali
and you could travel inside one of your cells,
in potovali v eno od svojih celic,
you would see something like this.
potem bi videli nekaj takega.
This is the outside membrane of the cell.
To je zunanja membrana celice.
Now we are going to cross the membrane,
Zdaj bomo šli skozi membrano
and we would see many things moving around,
in videli številne stvari, ki se premikajo v celici,
like little carts and trucks moving things from one place to another.
kot da bi z majhnimi tovornjački in prikolicami vozili stvari z enega konca na drugega.
Things that are being built and others that are being dismantled,
Stvari, ki se gradijo in stvari, ki se razgrajujejo.
and everything happening at a really high speed.
In vse to se dogaja z izjemno visoko hitrostjo.
This is an animation, but it's very real.
To je seveda animacija, ampak zelo resnična
This
animacija.
is what is going on now inside each of your cells.
To se zdaj dogaja v vsaki od vaših celic.
It reminds me to this,
In to me spominja na to.
an automated car factory,
Torej, avtomatizirana tovarna avtomobilov,
where each of the machines is doing its part,
kjer vsaki od strojev opravi svoj del
and all together they are coordinated so they can build something like a car.
Vsi skupaj so pa koordinirani tako, da na koncu zgradijo avto.
In the animation that we saw, there were all these little things moving around in the cell,
V animaciji, ki smo jo videli, so se vsi ti drobni delci premikali naokrog.
most of them were proteins.
Večina teh delcev so bili proteini.
What comes to your mind when you hear the word protein?
Kaj vam pride na misel, ko slišite besedo protein oziroma beljakovina? Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay. What else?
Kaj še poleg Schwarzeneggera?
Okay, strength. What else?
Food.
Food.
Hrana.
Usually when we hear about protein, we think of protein-rich foods.
Kadar razmišljamo o beljakovinah, ponovadi razmišljamo o hrani, ki je bogata z beljakovinami.
Like some of the great soups that we had in our lunch.
Kot nekaj od čudovitih juh, ki smo jih imeli za kosilo.
So we have protein from plants,
Imeli smo proteine iz rastlin.
and there are also some proteins that can come from meat or fish or eggs.
So proteini tudi, ki prihajajo iz mesa, iz rib, iz jajc.
We know that we have to eat protein
Vemo, da moramo zaužiti beljakovine,
because proteins are the bricks that make our body.
ker beljakovine so tiste opeke, ki sestavljajo naše telo.
The raw materials to build us.
To je tisti grobi material, ki nas gradi.
But they are also the tools that put the bricks in place.
Toda prav tako obstajajo tudi orodja, ki postavljajo te opeke na svoje mesto.
And they are also all the construction machines that coordinate the work inside the body.
In potem vsa oprema, ki koordinira delo znotraj našega telesa.
We have proteins everywhere in our bodies.
V našem telesu imamo povsod beljakovine.
Our hair is made of protein.
Naši lasje so iz beljakovin.
Our skin is made of protein.
Naša koža je iz beljakovin.
And our muscles are made of protein.
In tudi naše mišice.
Proteins have many functions in the body.
Beljakovine imajo v telesu veliko funkcij.
Besides being construction materials,
Poleg tega, da so gradbeni material,
they do transportation.
se prav tako ukvarjajo s transportom.
Do you know hemoglobin, the protein in our blood?
Poznate hemoglobin, ki je beljakovina v naši krvi,
That transports the oxygen from the lungs to the rest of the body.
ki transportira kisik iz naših pljuč v ostale dele telesa.
Some proteins are also messengers.
Nekatere beljakovine so tudi kot pismonoše,
Hormones are proteins.
hormoni so beljakovine.
And they are the chemicals that send messages from one part of our body to another part.
In to so kemične sestavine, ki prenašajo sporočila iz enega dela našega telesa v drugega.
And they say when some things have to start happening.
In sporočijo, kdaj se določene stvari morajo začeti dogajati.
Like your voice changes,
Kot vaš glas, ki se spreminja,
or some other body changes at some point of our lives.
ali pa spreminjajo se določeni drugi telesni deli v nekem obdobju našega življenja.
Or they control the life cycles,
Prav tako nadzorujejo življenjski cikl,
like the menstrual cycle,
menstrualni cikl,
pregnancies,
nosečnost,
all of that,
vse to,
proteins.
beljakovine.
Some of the proteins are just tolls or customs, they control access to the cells.
Nekatere beljakovine so kot carina, ki kontrolira pristop.
They are in charge to say, yes, you can come in or you can't.
Ali kot policija, ki pravi, ja, lahko vstopite ali pa ne.
We have some defense proteins.
Prav tako imamo nekatere zaščitne beljakovine ali obrambne,
Do you know antibodies?
torej protitelesa.
They are defense proteins that protect ourselves from bacteria, viruses.
To je zaščita, ki varuje naše celice pred bakterijami in virusi.
And then we have the enzymes.
In potem imamo encime,
They are also proteins,
ki so prav tako beljakovine.
and they are the lab masters of the body.
In ti encimi torej obvladujejo, nadzorujejo telo.
They decide which chemical reactions happen in each part of our body.
Na ta način, da določajo, katere kemične reakcije se dogajajo v posameznih delih našega telesa.
The rate of the reaction,
Stopnjo te reakcije
and also when the reaction has to start and finish.
in prav tako, kdaj se ta reakcija mora začeti in kdaj končati.
I'm going to show you some animations of some of these proteins.
Pokazala vam bom nekaj animacij teh beljakovin.
Here we have one of the access control proteins.
Tukaj imamo eno animacijo, ki govori o proteinih, ki nadzorujejo dostop.
Is this green thing that is integrated in the membrane of the cell,
To je ta zelena stvar, ki je integrirana v celično membrano.
and it's hollow inside. It's like a tunnel with a door.
Znotraj je votla, tako da deluje kot tunel, ki ima vrata.
So if someone wants to go in, it has to go through the protein.
In zato, če nekdo želi vstopiti, mora skozi ta protein.
And the protein will open the door or not.
In protein ali odpre vrata ali jih ne.
So let's see what happens with this little molecule that wants to go in.
Poglejmo, kaj se zgodi s to molekulo, ki želi vstopiti.
Okay, it was allowed.
Ni bilo dovoljeno.
Now we have another protein that is an enzyme.
Zdaj imamo še en protein, to je encim.
This is a digestive enzyme.
To je prebavni encim.
Digestive enzymes, they break our food apart
Prebavni encimi razgrajujejo našo hrano
in small pieces that can go then to the cells.
na majhne koščke, ki potem lahko vstopijo v celice.
And this enzyme is digesting proteins.
In ta encim je torej prebavna beljakovina.
So it's a protein digesting other proteins.
Je torej beljakovina, ki prebavlja druge beljakovine.
So the protein is the one that is closer to us. The enzyme is the one that is closer to us.
Encimi so ti, ki so nam bliže.
And we will break the protein that is coming to us.
In ti razgradijo potem beljakovine, ki prihajajo do nas.
So let's see it. Okay, that happened. So the last one that I want to show to you now,
Zadnja animacija, ki vam bom zdaj pokazala,
it's my favorite.
je meni najljubša.
It's a transportation protein,
Gre za transportne beljakovine.
but it's an intracellular one. It works inside the cell.
In to za beljakovine, ki delujejo znotraj celice.
Moves things from one part of the cell to another part of the cell.
Torej od enega konca celice do drugega.
It's called kinesin.
Imenuje se kenozin.
And it has little arms and little legs.
In ima majhne roke in majhne noge.
And it works transporting a big buckle in his back.
In deluje tako, da transportira velik tovar na svojem hrbtu.
So let's take a look. So the pink part is the protein.
Torej, tisti vijolični del je beljakovina,
And it's transporting a green buckle.
ki transportira zeleni večji del.
So did you see that the road that the protein is walking on,
Torej, kot ste videli, ta pot, po kateri proteini hodijo,
it's not there all the time.
ni tam ves čas,
It's building when it's needed,
ampak se gradi takrat, ko je potrebna.
and it's being dismantled behind.
In se potem zadaj razgrajuje.
So it's the perfect recycling system.
Tako da gre za popoln sistem reciklaže.
You probably know this one.
Verjetno ste videli že to.
This is hemoglobin.
To je hemoglobin.
And we will use hemoglobin to explain the structure of proteins.
In hemoglobin bomo uporabili za to, da pojasnimo strukturo beljakovin.
Proteins have many shapes and many sizes,
Beljakovine imajo veliko oblik in veliko velikosti,
but they have all the same structure, basic structure.
ampak vse imajo osnovno strukturo enako.
Proteins are chains of smaller pieces called amino acids.
Beljakovine so kot verige majhnih delcev, ki se imenujejo aminokisline.
The amino acids join together in a long chain,
Aminokisline se združujejo v daljšo verigo,
and then this chain folds and it gets the specific shape of the protein.
in potem se ta veriga oblikuje v specifično obliko proteina.
So let's look at the animation.
Poglejmo si to animacijo.
So you can see that amino acids have different sizes and shapes
Kot vidite, imajo aminokisline različne oblike in velikosti,
because they have different chemical compositions.
ker imajo različno kemično sestavo.
So they have different chemical characteristics.
Torej imajo različne kemične lastnosti.
Some of them are positive, some of them are negative.
Nekatere so pozitivne, druge negativne.
Some are hydrophilic, they like water.
Some are
Hydrophilic. They
Aha,
like
nekatere
water.
so hidrofilne, torej kot voda.
Some are hydrophobic.
Nekatere so hidrofobne.
So when the chain is already made, it falls automatically
In ko je ta veriga sestavljena,
depending on the interactions of the amino acids.
se potem oblikuje na podlagi interakcije aminokislin.
This is difficult, so I'm going to explain it again
To je nekaj, kar bom znova pojasnila.
with my own protein.
Z mojim lastnim proteinom.
I have here my own protein. Each of these little balls represents one amino acid.
To je moja beljakovina, ki je sestavljena iz različnih aminokislin. Vsaka ta kroglica predstavlja eno.
Amino acids, usually proteins have hundreds of amino acids.
Običajno imajo beljakovine na stotine aminokislin
And they are joined in a long chain.
in se združujejo v dolge verige.
And each of them has its own chemical features.
In vsaka od njih ima svoje kemične lastnosti.
So, for example, some of them, these light blue ones,
Naprimer te svetlo modre,
these are hydrophobic.
to so hidrofobne.
They don't want to be in contact with water.
Ne želijo se biti v stiku z vodo.
And inside our cells there is a lot of water.
V naših celicah pa je veliko vode.
So when the chain is made,
Zato, ko se ta veriga oblikuje,
they look for each other and they stay together
te beljakovine, aminokisline iščejo drugo in se združujejo
in the center of the protein.
in se nahajajo v samem središču beljakovine,
So the rest of the amino acids will protect them from water.
tako da jih preostale aminokisline zaščitijo pred vodo.
And some of the rest of the amino acids are positively charged.
In nekatere od teh drugih aminokislin imajo pozitivni naboj,
And some are negatively charged.
druge imajo negativni naboj.
So the positive ones will look for the closest negative ones,
Zato bodo te pozitivne iskale najbližje negativne
and they will reject the ones that have the same charge.
in zavračale tiste, ki imajo enak naboj.
So all these interactions will end up with a specific protein shape.
Zaradi vseh teh interakcij se potem ta beljakovina oblikuje na specifičen način.
And the specific and the function of the protein depends on the shape.
in funkcija beljakovine je odvisna od njene oblike.
So a protein that is not correctly folded, it won't work.
Torej, beljakovina, ki ni zložena na pravi način, ne bo delovala.
So let's take a look at some of the amino acids.
Poglejmo si nekaj aminokislin.
Each of these little balls is one atom.
Vsaka od teh kroglic malih je en atom.
And as you can see, they are different.
Kot lahko vidite, so različne.
There are some very small, there are some that are larger.
Nekatere so majhne, druge so večje.
Some of them have rings in them.
Nekatere imajo obroče v sebi.
And this has to do with their chemical features.
In vse to je povezano z njihovimi kemičnimi lastnostmi.
The ringed ones are usually hydrophobic.
Here, red ones.
The ring.
Tiste, ki imajo obroč, so običajno hidrofobne.
But this is too complicated.
Ampak to je zdaj prekomplicirano.
So, as you can see, all of them are different, but they have something in common.
Kot vidite, so vse te različne, ampak imajo nekaj skupnega.
All of them have on one side one blue atom.
Vse imajo na eni strani en moder atom.
And on the other side they have two red atoms.
Na drugi strani pa dva rdeča atoma.
The blue is nitrogen.
Moder je dušik.
The red are oxygen.
Rdeče sta kisik.
So the blue part is what we call the group amino.
In tisti moder del določa ime, torej amino.
And the red part is what we call the group acid.
In drugi rdeči del kislina.
So now you know why they are called amino acids.
In zato vemo, zakaj se imenujejo aminokisline.
And when they join together,
ko se združijo skupaj,
they join by these parts.
Se združijo torej s temi deli.
So the amino group of one amino acid gets joined with the acid group of the next.
Amino skupina iz ene se združi z kislinsko skupino iz druge.
So we get a long chain.
In dobimo dolgo verigo.
And the rest of the amino acids are hanging from the chain.
In ostale beljakovine visijo iz te verige.
So they are free to interact with each other.
Zato lahko se povezujejo med seboj.
And to fold the protein in a specific shape.
In zložijo ta protein na poseben način.
And these hundreds of amino acids then make shapes as beautiful as this one.
In na stotine teh aminokislin potem da nekaj tako lepega.
This is another representation of hemoglobin.
Še ena predstavitev hemoglobina je to.
We can compare this with Lego pieces.
To bi lahko primerjali z Lego kockami.
With Lego pieces you can make many different things.
Ker z Lego kockami lahko naredite različne stvari.
But you have to put each piece in place.
Ampak vsako kocko morate postaviti na njeno mesto.
You don't just throw the pieces there and you get a car.
Ne vržete preprosto vseh kock na tla in nastane avto.
You get to follow instructions to get a car made of Lego pieces.
Ampak sledite navodilom, kako narediti avtomobil iz Lego kock.
There are many different types of Lego pieces.
Obstajajo različne Lego kocke.
But we have 20 basic amino acids.
Ampak imamo 20 osnovnih aminokislin.
For a cell, it is very important to build its proteins correctly.
Za celico je seveda zelo pomembno, da svoje beljakovine zgradi na pravi način.
To put the amino acids in the correct place.
Da aminokisline postavi na pravi prostor.
To make the correct protein, like hemoglobin in the blood.
Pravo beljakovino, kot je na primer hemoglobin.
Or collagen in the skin.
Ki je v naši krvi ali pa druge, ki so v koži.
Cells are making thousands of different amino acids. Proteins.
Celice ustvarjajo na tisoče različnih beljakovin.
With the 20 amino acids, combinations of the 20 amino acids.
In to iz kombinacije 20 aminokislin.
And they have a specific compartment to make these proteins.
In poseben del celice ustvarja te beljakovine.
And that's why this talk is called the protein factory.
In zato ima to predavanje naslov Proteinska tovarna.
They don't have just one.
Nima samo en tak del.
They have thousands.
Ampak na tisoče.
Because they need to be making proteins all the time.
Zato, ker morajo proizvajati beljakovine ves čas.
So let's take a look to one of the thousands of protein factories that we have in one cell.
Če pogledamo eno od teh tisočih tovarn beljakovin, ki so v naši celici.
This is a ribosome.
To je ribosom.
And now we see functioning.
In zdaj vidimo, kako deluje.
So the chain that you can see coming out of the upper part of the ribosome,
Torej, zgornji del tega ribosoma
that is the protein.
je beljakovina.
But how does the ribosome know which amino acid has to be the next one to put in the protein?
Ampak kako ribosom ve, katera aminokislina mora biti naslednja, ki jo vstavi v beljakovino?
It's because it's receiving instructions to make the proteins.
To je zaradi tega, ker je dobil navodila, kako izdelati beljakovine.
At the bottom part of the ribosome, we can see there another chain, a thread.
Na spodnjem delu ribosoma vidimo še eno verigo.
And these are the instructions to make the protein.
In ta veriga predstavlja navodila za izdeljavo beljakovin.
And what are these instructions?
In kakšna so ta navodila?
Does this sound familiar to you?
Ste to že kdaj videli?
This is a molecule, special, very special molecule in our cells,
To je posebna molekula v naših celicah,
that it has this shape,
ki ima to obliko
and we call it
in imenujemo jo
DNA.
DNA.
So the DNA the DNA is the instructions to make in the DNA we have the instructions to make our entire body.
Torej, v tej DNA imamo navodila, ki tvorijo naše celotno telo.
There are instructions to make your eyes,
Navodila za vaše oči,
to make your hair,
za izdelavo vaših las,
your bones, your heart,
vaših kosti, srca,
everything.
vse.
But DNA, it's a very special molecule because it only has 4 different types of pieces.
DNA je pa prav posebna molekula, zato ker ima samo 4 sestavne dele.
In this representation on the screen, or in this one, you can see that like the steps of the staircase.
V tej prezentaciji na ekranu ali pa tu v modelu vidite, da so kot stopnice na nekem stopnišču.
They only have 4 colors.
In da obstajajo samo 4 barve.
Because they are representing 4 types of molecules that make up DNA.
Ker predstavljajo 4 tipe molekul, ki tvorijo DNA.
You have the names on the screen.
Imena imate na ekranu.
Adenine, thymine, guanine and cytosine.
Adenin, timin, guanin in citozin.
You probably know the first letters of them.
Verjetno se spomnite vseh teh po prvih črkah, po začetnicah.
So with these 4 letters or molecules,
Z temi 4 črkami, tej molekuli,
all the instructions are there in the DNA to make every part of our body.
so vsa navodila, ki gradijo naše celotno telo.
So we can say that DNA is like a blueprint.
Lahko rečemo, da je DNA kot načrt.
But it's a special blueprint because it's written with just 4 letters.
In to poseben načrt, ki je sestavljen samo iz 4 črk.
And some decades ago it was difficult for students to understand this.
In včasih je študentom bilo težko to razumeti.
And in fact, when DNA was discovered, scientists thought that it was too simple to be the inheritance material.
In ko so odkrili DNA, so znanstveniki najprej mislili, da je to nekaj preveč preprostega.
But now we understand that because all the information that we have in our computers
Ampak danes to razumemo drugače, ker vse informacije, ki jih imamo v naših računalnikih,
it's just made up of ones and zeros.
so sestavljene iz enic in ničel.
So we know how to encode really complex information with just a few symbols.
In vse te z nekaj preprostimi sestavnimi deli ustvarjajo zelo kompleksne informacije.
The important thing about the computer code
Pomembna stvar pri računalniški kodi
is the order of the ones and zeros. They are not just randomly put in
je
there.
vrstni red ničel in enk, niso kar tako vrženi.
But this ordered sequence of ones and zeros
Ampak ta vrstni red, ničel in enic,
can encode books and images and movies and sounds, everything that I have in my laptop. is ones and
ustvarja
zeros.
oziroma kodira knjige, slike, videe, vse, kar imam v svojem računalniku.
Do you know any other human code that uses only a few symbols to transmit information.
Ali poznate še kakšno človeško kodo, ki uporablja samo nekaj simbolov za to, da prenaša informacije? Writing?
Writing could be, but we use a lot of symbols in writing.
Ampak pri
At least
pisavi
20 something.
imamo 20 in nekaj simbolov, recimo.
Less than that, a lot less than that. Like 2 symbols.
Iščemo nekaj, kar ima manj, samo 2 simbola.
Morse code, perfect.
Ja, Morzejeva abeceda.
Yes. With just dots and dashes, we can have the first verse of the Bible.
Torej samo z pikicami in črticami imamo izpisano prvo vrstico Svetega pisma.
Or we can have the entire Bible if we have enough time.
Lahko bi izpisali tako celo Sveto pismo, če bi imeli dovolj časa.
What do we need to decode this message or to write this message in Morse code?
Kaj potrebujemo, da dekodiramo to sporočilo?
We need the key. We need to know the equivalence between the letters and the symbols.
Potrebujemo ključ, ki nam pojasni te pike in črtice.
This is the code key for Morse code.
In tukaj je ključ za Morzejevo abecedo.
And this was invented by a man called Samuel Morse.
In izumil ga je človek po imenu Samuel Morse.
And he decided which symbols in which order were going to be an A or a T or an L.
In on je bil tisti, ki je določil, kateri simbol in v kakšnem vrstnem redu bo katera črka, A, T, L.
In the case of DNA, we have DNA with just 4 symbols.
V primeru DNA imamo DNA s samo 4 simboli,
And they encode the information to make proteins
ki vsebujejo informacijo za izdelavo beljakovin,
that have 20 different amino acids.
ki imajo 20 različnih aminokislin.
So it needs to be an equivalence between the letters in the DNA and the amino acids in a protein.
Zato mora obstajati določen ekvivalent med črkami v DNA-ju in aminokislinami.
So there is also a key code.
Obstaja tudi za to ključ.
I'm going to show it to you.
Pokazala vam ga bom.
In this case, we have not invented this code.
V tem primeru nismo mi bili tisti, ki so izumili ta ključ.
The code was already there in the cells,
Ključ je že bil v celici.
and we have discovered it, but not invented it.
Mi smo ga odkrili, nismo ga pa izumili.
In Morse code, some letters have 2 symbols, or just 1 symbol or 2.
V Morzejevi abecedi ima določena črka enega ali 2 simbola,
But some have 3 or 4.
nekatere imajo pa 3 ali 4.
In the DNA code, everything is encoded in groups of 3.
V kodi, v DNA je vse kodirano v skupinah po 3.
So 3 letters of the DNA together, they mean 1 specific amino acid.
Torej, 3 črke DNA skupaj tvorijo eno specifično aminokislino.
And to read this code, this key code, we start in the center
In da beremo ta ključ, začnemo v centru, v
and we
središču,
go out.
in potem gremo navzven.
So, for example, if we want to know the amino acid that is encoded by the sequence of letters CCA,
Recimo, če želimo aminokislino, ki je predstavlja koda CCA,
we start at the center
začnemo v sredini,
with the C at the center,
z C v
then we
sredini,
go to the next C and then to the A,
gremo do naslednjega C in potem
and
A.
at the outer part of the circle we have the name of the amino acid that we have to put in the protein.
In v zunanjem krogu imamo ime aminokisline, ki je v proteinu.
And in this case is called proline,
V tem primeru gre za prolin
and it's an amino acid with a ring
in to je aminokislina z obročem,
that I have here represented by this green ring.
ki sem jaz predstavila s tem zelenim obročem.
Okay, so let's try it again.
Še enkrat.
Okay, so if we want GAA, for example,
Če imamo GAA,
we'll go from the center out,
gremo iz sredine ven
and then we see that it's called, this amino acid is called glutamic acid.
in to je glutaminska kislina,
And then it has another shape, a different shape.
ki ima spet drugačno obliko.
That I'm going to represent with another one.
ki jo predstavljam z drugo
Another
obliko.
shape. And then we'll try another one.
Poskusimo še z eno.
TGG.
TGG.
From the center out, TGG, and
Iz
then we read
središča
there tryptophan.
Imamo triptofan.
And I'm going to have another one, the different one here, to represent it.
In
Like this one, for example.
predstavlja recimo ta modelček.
Has a different shape and chemical
ima
features.
Spet različno, drugačno obliko in seveda s tem tudi drugačne lastnosti.
Last one.
Še zadnja.
AGT.
AGT.
Can you read it? Okay. What's AGT?
Kaj je AGT?
Serine, perfect.
Serin, tako.
And it has another specific shape in there.
In ima spet svojo obliko.
Let me see which one I have here to try. For example, this one. Okay, so when the ribosome is building the protein,
Ko ribosom gradi beljakovino,
it reads the DNA message
bere sporočilo DNA
in groups of 3,
v skupinah po 3
and then it takes the amino acids
in potem vzame te aminokisline
and joins them together
in jih združuje
by the little arms.
Baj,
The little arms they
s
have.
temi majhnimi rokami
And then you get a long chain of amino acids.
in potem dobite verigo aminokislin
And at the end of it, they will bend
in na koncu se ukrivijo,
depending on the interactions.
odvisno od interakcije.
And then you will have a final protein.
In potem imate na koncu končni izdelek beljakovine.
Okay, usually when I do this lecture, I have an exercise to do with the entire audience,
Običajno, kadar imam to predavanje, imam vajo za celotno občinstvo,
but I don't have enough materials for so many people.
ampak nimam dovolj materiala za vse ljudi, ki ste
So
tukaj.
we'll do it just with a few people while we keep talking.
Mi bomo dali nalogo samo nekaj posameznikom, medtem ko bomo govorili naprej.
So I will need the help of 4 people who know something, who have some background in biology.
Rada bi pomoč 4 oseb, ki imajo recimo ozadje kakšno iz biologije.
Can be anyone in the health
Lahko je kdorkoli iz
sciences,
področja zdravstvenih ved
or just with a science high school degree, that's fine.
ali preprosto nekdo, ki je končal srednjo šolo.
It's going to be easy.
Tako lahko bo to.
Okay, we have one person here, we need 3 more.
Imamo eno
Please.
osebo, rabimo še
3
3.
more that can come and help
Še
us.
3 osebe, ki lahko pridejo in nam
Fast.
pomagajo. Lučka.
Okay. 2, we need 2 more.
Še 2 osebe rabimo.
Because we're going to have a contest. Okay, perfect.
Evo,
So you
evo.
can stay on this side. You
Vidva
can stay on this
ostanete
side. We have 2 teams,
Imamo 2 ekipi zdaj,
and they will have to make a protein
ki boste morali izdelati beljakovino.
by decoding this DNA message that's on the screen.
Z dekodiranjem tega sporočila, ki je na zaslonu.
I will give it to you in
Jaz,
paper.
jaz vam bom dala papir,
I will give you also the key to decode it.
ključ.
But you don't have just to write the amino acid. You have to make the protein.
Torej ne samo, da napišete aminokislino, ampak morate izdelati beljakovino.
By the way, the protein that you're going to build is the smallest possible protein.
Beljakovina, ki jo boste izdelali, je najmanjša možna beljakovina.
It only has 20 amino acids.
Ima samo 20 aminokislin.
And it's part of the venom of this animal that it's called the Gila monster.
In je del strupa te živali, ki jo vidite tukaj.
So I will give you the message.
Torej, dala vam bom
Then
sporočilo.
you will have to break the message in groups of 3.
Sporočilo je treba razdeliti na skupine po 3.
Then go to the key and look for the names of the amino acids.
Potem morate pogledati na ključ in
And then
poiskati imena
on that
aminokislin.
table there,
In iz tiste mize, ki je tam,
you have the amino acids. These are
Tam so
representing the
aminokisline.
amino acids.
nekaj, kar predstavlja
Are similar
aminokisline.
to this one, just smaller.
Podobno temu, ampak manjši.
And I will give you another key
In dala vam bom še en ključ
with the shapes and names of the amino acids.
z oblikami in imeni aminokislin.
So you will have to decode this
Torej, treba jih bo dekodirati
and you have to build the protein.
in zgraditi beljakovine.
At the end of your task, you have to have a long chain with 20 amino acids in the correct order.
Na koncu vaše naloge morate imeti verigo z aminokislinami v pravem vrstnem redu.
Okay? Yeah?
Okay.
Okay, so this is for you. Petra, can you time them? When you're done, you tell us and we will see how much time it took for you to make your protein.
Štopala, ko boste gotovi, boste povedali, da ste opravili.
Okay, so they have a job to do, but you have to pay attention to me.
Oni imajo svoje delo, vi pa morate pozornost usmeriti name.
I wanted people with some biological experience.
Torej, želela sem ljudi z nekaj izkušnjami z tega področja,
Because they already know what I'm going to explain to you.
ker vedo to, o čemer bom jaz zdaj
So
vam
I'm
govorila.
going out of the presentation for a second,
Samo za hip
and we will go back later.
gremo naprej.
So I'm going to explain to you what is going on there, what they are doing.
In jaz vam bom pojasnila, kaj se pravzaprav dogaja tam, kaj počnejo.
Okay, here we see the inside of a ribosome.
Tukaj vidimo notranjost ribosoma.
So I'm going to explain to you how this happens. How can the ribosome read the instructions and put the pieces in place?
In pojasnila vam bom, kako ribosom bere navodila in postavlja te gradnike na svoje mesto.
You have there, Petra, they have there on the electronic piano, they have the key in a larger, and the colors are probably better in that one, so they can use those if they want. Okay, so each of the teams is going to be a ribosome. So we are going to have a contest between ribosomes.
Torej, vsaka od teh dveh ekip je en ribosom, ki proizvaja beljakovine, tekmuje.
And we want the fastest one.
Želimo si najhitrejšega.
But also it's very important that they don't make mistakes.
Ampak prav tako je pomembno, da ne naredijo napake.
Because if they take an amino acid that is incorrect,
Ker če vzamejo aminokislino, ki ni pravilna,
or they mixed up the order,
ali pomešajo vrstni red,
then the protein won't fall correctly
potem se beljakovina ne bo zložila na pravi način
and it won't work.
in ne bo delovala.
So we need both speed and precision.
Zato potrebujemo hkrati hitrost in natančnost.
How do the actual ribosomes do this?
Kako ribosomi to dosežejo?
They have a lot of help.
Ribosomi imajo veliko pomoči.
They receive the message from the nucleus
Dobijo sporočilo iz jedra,
because the DNA is locked inside the nucleus of a cell,
ker DNA je v jedru celice
and it doesn't go out of the cell
in nikoli ne zapusti celice,
ever,
nikoli,
because this is very important information. It needs to be protected.
ker je to zelo pomembna informacija, ki jo je potrebno zaščititi.
So when the cell needs a protein,
Ko celica potrebuje beljakovino,
a photocopy is made. A photocopy of the blueprint.
je narejena fotokopija načrta.
So the section of the nucleus that has the correct, that has the instructions for hemoglobin,
Torej, tisti del jedra, ki ima navodila za recimo hemoglobin,
just as that part is copied
ta del se kopira
and sent out to the ribosomes.
in pošlje ribosom.
And it goes through the ribosome,
In potem gre skozi ribosom
and then the ribosome has to put the correct amino acids in place.
in potem mora ribosom postaviti prave aminokisline v pravilni vrstni red.
But the ribosome doesn't go around the cell looking for the amino acids.
Ampak ribosom se ne sprehaja po tej celici in išče te aminokisline.
The amino acids are transported to the ribosome.
Aminokisline so transportirane v ribosom.
We have these little bottle-shaped things that
Tukaj
you see
imamo
here.
te oblike v obliki steklenice,
They are called tRNAs,
ki se imenujejo RNA,
and they are the transporters of the amino acids.
in to so tiste, ki transportirajo aminokisline.
And there are 61 different ones.
In obstaja 61 različnih.
And each of these tRNAs only transports one type of amino acid.
In vsako teh 61 tRNA transportira samo eno aminokislino.
They only have one job, to transport one type of amino acid.
Imajo torej samo eno nalogo, transportirati samo eno vrsto aminokisline.
So they have a specific amino acid on one part,
Zato imajo na enem delu specifično aminokislino.
and on the other side of the molecule of the tRNA,
In na drugem koncu molekule tRNA
there is a specific shape that looks like a key and a lock system.
je posebna oblika, ki izgleda kot ključ in ključavnica.
So the amino acid, let's say this one's glycine.
Aminokislina, recimo ta glisin,
So the tRNA that transports the glycine
tRNA, ki ga transportira,
in the opposite side of the molecule has the shape
ima
that
na
fits
drugi strani molekule obliko, ki ustreza,
exactly with the three letters of the message that code for glycine.
ki ustreza točno 3 črkam sporočila za to aminokislino.
That's why there are no mistakes.
Zato se ne zgodijo napake.
Because when a glycine is needed,
Zato, ker ko potrebujemo glicin,
no other amino acid can come in, only the glycine.
ne more priti nobena druga aminokislina, ampak samo glicin.
Then when the glycine is in place,
In ko je glicin na svojem mestu,
then the message moves,
potem se sporočilo premakne naprej.
and we have 3 more letters,
Imamo 3 črke spet
and only the tRNA that has that other amino acid can come in and stay and release the amino acid.
in samo tista tRNA, ki ima te 3 črke, lahko pride, ostane in potem pripelje aminokislino.
Okay, I think we have a winner.
Ja,
How long it was? 5 minutes?
5 minut.
Wow, you're fast.
Kdo je sta hitra bila?
Usually this takes around 7 minutes for most of the teams, so you're really good.
Za večino ekip to je 7 minut, nekje povprečje.
Okay, let's wait for the other team to finish. I think they're almost finished.
Mislim, da sta tudi druga dva že skoraj gotova.
And now we will check
Zdaj bomo pogledali,
if they are correct, if their proteins are correct.
če so njihove beljakovine v pravem vrstnem redu.
Because maybe you are fast, but you make mutations.
Mogoče ste hitri, ampak ste ustvarili mutacije.
And in this case, it wouldn't be much of a problem because remember that this is a protein from a venom.
V tem primeru to ne bi bila velika težava, ker je to beljakovina, ki je v strupu.
So if it doesn't work, maybe it's good.
Torej, če ne deluje, potem je mogoče to dobro.
But let's see.
Ampak poglejmo.
Okay, you're done already?
Yeah.
Yes. How much time? 6:56. Really good. Almost 7. Really good. Okay. So, let's check them. Okay, let's check that.
Poglejmo.
Okay, you can put them in front of the audience and they can check if you are correct.
So prave barve.
Okay. Everything is correct? Okay, so we have white, then red,
belo,
brown,
rdečo, rjavo,
orange,
oranžno,
purple,
vijolično,
pink, red,
roza,
brown.
rdeča, rjava.
And you can see that there are different types of amino acids with the same color.
In kot vidite, so različne vrste aminokislin z isto barvo.
Because there are amino acids that are similar to each other, but they are not exactly the same.
Ker imamo aminokisline, ki so podobne
Everything is
druge,
correct?
ampak niso identične.
You're super good ribosomes. That's amazing.
To je izjemno dobre, hvala lepa.
Okay, you can leave them there and go to your place.
Lahko greste na
And
svoj
you are
prostor.
really good ribosomes.
Bili ste res zelo dobri ribosomi.
But now I'm going to show you a ribosome, a real one, doing the same job.
Zdaj vam bom pa pokazala pravi ribosom, ki opravi isto nalogo.
To see if they do it faster than you or not, or what's going on in the cells.
Da vidimo, ali to naredijo hitreje kot ste vi, oziroma kaj se dogaja v celicah.
We're going to see the entire process.
Videli bomo celoten proces.
The opening of the DNA,
Odpiranje DNA,
the copy of the section that we need.
Kopijo tistega dela, ki ga potrebujemo.
Then this section is going to be sent out.
Potem bo ta del poslan ven.
Then the ribosome is going to join because it has two parts.
In potem se bo ta ribosom pridružil, ker ima dva dela.
With the message in between.
Sporočilom, ki je v sredini.
Then it's going to read the message.
Prebral sporočilo.
Translate and make the protein.
Ga prevedel in izdelal beljakovino.
Okay, so let's see.
Poglejmo.
The DNA is opening.
DNA se odpira.
Now we have a protein that is making the copy.
Imamo protein, ki izdeluje kopijo.
The yellow thing is the copy.
Tista rumena stvar je kopija.
Sent to the cytoplasm.
Potem je ta poslan.
The ribosome is coupled and it's reading.
In ribosom dela.
And done.
In opravljeno.
So that green thing is the protein.
Ta zelena stvar je beljakovina.
It takes between 1 and 3 seconds.
Dejansko je potrebno med sekundo in 3 sekunde.
For a ribosome to make a 20 amino acid protein.
Ribosom izdela beljakovino z 20 aminokislinami.
But that doesn't mean that ribosomes are smarter than you.
Ampak to ne pomeni, da so ribosomi pametnejši od vas.
It just means that the system is really well designed.
Ampak preprosto pomeni, da je sistem zelo dobro dizajniran.
It's automatized.
Da je avtomatiziran.
They have helpers that put the amino acids in place really fast.
In da imajo pomočnike, ki postavljajo hitro aminokisline na svoje mesto.
I'm going to show you an animation of this.
Pokazala vam bom še eno animacijo tega.
The ribosome reading the message and the little tRNA is putting the amino acids in place.
Ribosom, ki bere sporočilo in male tRNA, ki postavljajo aminokisline na svoje mesto.
It will look very complicated.
Izgledalo bo to zelo zapleteno.
But that's what I want you to feel, that this is really complex.
Ampak preprosto želim si, da začutite, da gre za res nekaj kompleksnega.
Okay, so here we go.
Gremo.
This is the ribosome, the yellow thing is the message.
To je ribosom, tista rumena stvar je sporočilo.
And the red things that are coming in, these are the tRNAs.
In te rdeče stvari, ki prihajajo, so tRNA, transportne RNA.
They have high speed, they fit, and then they release the amino acid.
Torej z veliko hitrostjo se približajo, prilepijo, sprostijo aminokislino.
That's the message.
To je sporočilo.
And these are the little tRNAs releasing the amino acids.
In to so mali tRNA, ki sproščajo aminokisline.
So this is like a factory.
To je kot tovarna.
But it's tiny.
In zelo drobna tovarna.
Super fast, super efficient.
Super hitra in super učinkovita.
This is happening all the time in your cells.
In to se ves čas dogaja v vaših celicah.
In this precise moment.
Prav v tem trenutku.
Okay. Here we have an illustration that shows the entire system.
To je ilustracija, ki kaže celoten sistem.
So all the little parts that are needed to make this.
Vse dele, ki so potrebni za izdelavo.
All of these things needed to be there in the first cell.
In vse te stvari so morali biti v prvi celici.
So when the theory of evolution says that the first cells just appear,
in če teorija evolucije pravi, da se je prva celica kar pojavila,
this is really difficult to believe.
Potem je to zelo težko verjeti.
Because if you only had DNA,
ker če imate samo in bi imeli samo DNA,
that's for nothing.
Potem to ni nič.
You need proteins to read the DNA.
Potrebujete beljakovine, ki bodo prebrale DNA.
And if you have proteins but you don't have DNA, then
če bi imeli beljakovine, pa ne bi imeli DNA,
it's not working because the proteins are encoded in the DNA.
Spet ne bi delovalo, ker proteini so enkodirani v DNA.
It's like the egg-chicken dilemma.
Torej, dilema jajce ali kokoš.
You need everything there at the same time.
Preprosto potrebujete vse v istem trenutku.
But this gets even more complex.
Ampak to postane še bolj zapleteno.
Do you know how long is the DNA in one of your cells?
Ali veste, kako dolga je DNA v eni od vaših celic?
The measurement of it.
Torej, če bi jo zmerili?
3 metre.
About that. So usually we say 2 meters.
Torej, 2 metra.
in each of your 30 trillion cells.
v vsaki od vaših 30 trilijonov celic.
The DNA of one person could go to the moon and back.
Torej, DNA ene osebe seže do Lune in nazaj.
So these 2 meters have to be in a very, very tiny nucleus of a very, very tiny cell.
Torej, ta 2 metra morata biti v zelo drobnem jedru zelo drobne celice
And to fit in there, it has to be compacted
in da pašejo tja, mora biti stisnjen
and folded.
in zložen.
So usually we represent the DNA like this,
Mi običajno DNA predstavljamo tako,
but we never find it like this in the cells.
ampak v celici ni nikoli takšna.
It's like coiled and folded around some proteins and more and more and more to pack it.
Je torej zložena, zavezana okrog celice, zelo strnjena.
So saving space is important in a cell,
V celici je seveda pomembno, da se prihrani prostor.
and the DNA has some strategies to save
In
space.
DNA ima nekaj strategij, s katerimi prihrani prostor.
For example, if we have to make several proteins that are similar,
Če bi, na primer, morali izdelati nekaj beljakovin, ki so podobne,
like different types of hemoglobins,
kot recimo različne vrste hemoglobina,
because the hemoglobin of an embryo that is inside the mom is different from the hemoglobin of the mom.
ker, na primer, hemoglobin embrija, ki je v mami, je drugačen kot hemoglobin mame.
They are similar but not exactly the same.
Sta podobna, ampak ne ista.
So to save space,
Zato, da se prihrani prostor,
instead of having the instructions for one in one part of the DNA and the instructions for one in another part of the
namesto da bi bile
DNA,
navodila v enem delu in potem navodila za nekaj drugega v nekem drugem delu DNA,
we have just one segment with all the information
imamo en segment z vsemi informacijami
for hemoglobin.
za hemoglobin.
And then when a specific type of hemoglobin has to be made,
In potem, ko je potrebno izdelati specifično vrsto hemoglobina,
the sections of that segment are cut and pasted.
so potem deli tega segmenta zrezani in zlepljeni.
Some section is not used for the baby, but yes for the mom.
Torej, nekateri deli niso za dojenčka, ampak ja za mamo.
So we get different types of hemoglobins with just one section of the
Tako da
DNA.
dobimo različne vrste hemoglobina iz samo enega dela DNA.
I know this is very complex.
Vem, da to zveni zelo
So
kompleksno.
I'm going to give you a comparison to understand this better.
Zato vam bom dala eno primerjavo, da boste lažje razumeli.
In the old times when we didn't have internet,
V starih časih, ko nismo imeli interneta,
people used to write letters.
so ljudje pisali pisma.
And this is a letter that it's from all times.
To je eno pismo iz takih starih časov,
This was found in some old newspaper.
ki se je nahajalo v nekem starem
It's
časopisu.
supposed to be a love letter.
Naj bi bilo ljubezensko pismo.
So you have the text here in English,
Besedilo je tukaj v angleščini,
but it doesn't read really well.
ampak
So I
Ni
wrote
ravno
it
dobro
on
vidno.
top of it, but I just copied it on top.
jaz sem samo kopirala to.
So I'm going to ask you that you read directly, if you can do it here, like the first, this one.
Okay.
Some sentences from there.
Gospa, velika ljubezen in nežnost, ki sem jo do sedaj izrazil do vas, je lažna in zdaj čutim mojo ravnodušnost do vas in se povečuje proporcionalno vsak dan. Več kot vas vidim, bolj se mi to zdi smešno in predmet prezira in bolj se čutim naklonjenega in končno odločenega, da vas sovražim.
Okay, do you think this is a love letter?
Ali mislite, da je to ljubezensko pismo?
Doesn't look like it.
Ni videti kot
So
ljubezensko
it's more
pismo.
like not like hate letters, something like that.
Zveni bolj kot neko sovražno pismo.
Okay, but look at what happens
Ampak poglejte, kaj se zgodi.
when we take out
Če izvzamemo
one sentence from it, like one line from each, a couple of lines, so
vsako drugo vrstico,
like this.
potem je zgodba drugačna. Torej, velika ljubezen in nežnost, ki sem jo vam do sedaj izrazil, se proporcionalno povečuje vsak dan. Več kot vas vidim, bolj sem nagnjen in končno odločen, da vam ponudim svojo roko in svoje srce.
Now is a love letter.
Zdaj imamo ljubezensko pismo.
This was a secret message.
To je bilo skrivnostno sporočilo,
It was hidden inside.
ki je bilo skrito.
So it had two messages in one place.
Torej, na enem mestu smo imeli dve sporočili.
Depending on how you combine the lines, then you have a love letter or a hate letter.
In odvisno od tega, kako kombinirate te vrstice, imate ljubezensko pismo ali to sovražno pismo.
So the same thing happens with DNA.
In isto se dogaja za DNA.
We have several different messages in the same segment of the DNA,
V istem segmentu DNA imamo različna sporočila
and all of them have meaning.
in vsa imajo smisel.
So it is very difficult to write a letter like this
Zelo težko je napisati pismo, kot je to,
that has the two messages inside.
ki ima v sebi dve sporočili.
You have to be very intelligent to do that.
Morate biti zelo inteligentni, da to naredite.
So imagine how intelligent needs to be the person, the being that put the messages
Kako
in the
inteligentna
DNA.
torej mora biti oseba oziroma bitje, ki postavi sporočilo v DNA.
And there is still more.
In tukaj še več.
I'm going to go fast over this, but I have to tell you.
Hitro bomo šli skozi to, ampak moram vam povedati.
On Thursday in Ljubljana, I was saying I love to talk about epigenetics,
V četrtek v Ljubljani sem rekla, da rada govorimo o epigenetiki.
and I'm going to say it in the 5 minutes that we have left.
V 5 minutah, ki so nam še ostale, bom povedala bistvo.
Epigenetics is something that has been discovered recently
Epigenetika je nekaj, kar je bilo odkrito nedavno,
in the last decades,
v zadnjih desetletjih.
and it has to do with that folding and compacting of the DNA.
In je povezano s tem zlaganjem DNA.
Because the DNA has to be folded inside the nucleus.
Ker DNA je treba zložiti znotraj
There
jedra.
are some parts of the DNA that are not accessible for reading and translating.
Tako da nekateri deli DNA niso dostopni za branje in prevajanje.
So the message is there, but it cannot be read.
Torej, sporočilo je tam, ampak ga ne morete prebrati.
It's like if you have a book and two of the pages are glued together.
Torej, kot da bi imeli knjigo in sta dve strani zlepljeni.
So the message is there, but you cannot read it.
Sporočilo je tam, ampak vi ga ne morete prebrati.
Okay, so scientists have discovered that on the outer part of the DNA,
Znanstveniki so odkrili, da na zunanjem delu DNA
there are some little labels, some little tags, they're molecules,
obstajajo majhne oznake, to so molekule,
and they affect the readability, I don't know,
Yeah.
the possibility of reading the DNA.
ki vplivajo na berljivost DNA.
So there are some of these little molecules that open the DNA so it can be read and translated.
Torej, nekatere te male molekule odpirajo DNA, da je lahko ta prebrana in prevedena.
And some other molecules, they lock the DNA so it cannot be translated.
In druge molekule zaklepajo DNA, da je ni moč prebrati.
And the important thing of these little molecules is that they are added on the DNA or taken out
In pomembna stvar pri teh molekulah je, da so dodane ali odvzete DNA,
depending on environmental factors.
odvisno od dejavnikov iz okolja.
We cannot change the letters in our DNA,
Torej, ne moremo spremeniti črk v naši DNA,
but we can affect our DNA depending on our behavior.
ampak lahko s svojim vedenjem vplivamo na naš DNA.
Things like what you eat,
Torej, stvari, kot so na primer, kaj jemo,
if you take drugs,
jemljete mamila,
if you sleep enough,
če spite dovolj,
if you work out,
telovadite,
if you're stressed,
ste pod stresom,
you have friends,
imate
you
prijatelje,
have a good relationship with God,
imate dober odnos z Bogom.
all of these things are going to put some labels in your DNA,
Vse te stvari bodo na vašo DNA dali določene oznake.
and science has proven that the good things, the healthy things, they put good labels in our DNA.
In znanost je dokazala, da dobre stvari, ki jih počnemo, dajo dobre oznake na našo DNA.
So a good healthy diet, exercise, all of these things that we know,
Torej, zdrava prehrana, telovadba, vse stvari, ki jih poznamo,
they can be locking some of your genes that are bad for you.
lahko zaklenejo nekatere od vaših genov, ki so slabi za vas.
There are some genes that make you susceptible to have cancer.
So, na primer, geni, zaradi katerih ste bolj podvrženi možnosti za razvoj raka.
And your healthy habits can lock those genes, so you have the information but you don't have the cancer.
Vaše dobre, zdrave navade lahko zaklenejo te gene.
And this is not absolute.
To ni seveda absolutno.
I'm not saying that if you do everything well, you're not going to have cancer. You know that doesn't work that way.
Nikakor ne želim reči, da če boste delali vse prave stvari, nikakor ne boste imeli raka.
But you increase your possibilities of a healthy, long life.
Ampak preprosto s tem povečujete možnost za zdravo in dolgo življenje.
And the other important thing about this is that these labels stay in your DNA for several generations.
In še ena pomembna stvar je, da te oznake ostanejo v vaši DNA več generacij.
You give your good labels or your bad labels to your children.
Torej, vaše dobre oznake ali slabe dajete svojim otrokom.
And even to your grandchildren.
In celo svojim vnukom.
This was discovered because people who suffered during World War II in concentration camps.
To so odkrili zaradi ljudi, ki so med drugo svetovno vojno trpeli v koncentracijskih taboriščih.
Their descendants, like grandchildren,
njihovi potomci, kot na primer vnuki,
born many years later,
ki so bili rojeni veliko let pozneje,
they have health problems
so imeli zdravstvene težave,
due to the little labels that were added to the DNA during the suffering times.
Zahvaljujoč tem oznakam, ki so se pojavile v DNA v času trpljenja.
And this also has changed some of the main tenets of the theory of evolution.
In to je seveda spremenilo tudi nekatere vidike teorije evolucije.
There is an interesting story about this blind fish.
To je zanimiva zgodba o slepi ribi,
They live in caves in Mexico.
ki živi v votlinah, v jamah v Mehiki.
And the conventional story for their origin
In običajna zgodba, ko gre za njen izvor,
was like this.
je bila takšna.
There was a population of fish that ended up living in a cave.
Torej, neka populacija rib je živela v jami.
And one of them got a random mutation and
In
he got
ena od
blind.
njih je zaradi naključne mutacije bila slepa.
And because inside dark caves you don't need your eyes,
In zaradi tega, ker v temnih jamah ne potrebujete oči,
in that specific case that was an advantage.
v tej konkretni jami to je bila prednost.
Because the blind fish were not using energy in the eyes, and they could use the energy for reproduction or something else.
Slepe ribe niso uporabljale energije s svojimi očmi, ampak so jo lahko uporabljale za kaj drugega.
So they had more babies than the fish with eyes.
Zato so imele več mladičkov kot ribe z očmi.
And after some generations, the entire population was blind.
In po nekaj generacijah je bila celotna populacija slepa.
But then some researchers started studying the DNA of these fishes.
Potem pa so raziskovalci, ki so proučevali DNA teh rib,
And they discovered that it was not about mutation and natural selection.
so odkrili, da ne gre za mutacijo in naravno selekcijo,
It was an epigenetic mechanism.
ampak da gre za epigenetski mehanizem,
So they have the genes to make the eyes,
ker te ribe imajo gene za oči,
but they are locked.
ampak ti geni so zaklenjeni.
They don't need the eyes, so they don't build the eyes.
Ne potrebujejo oči, zato jih ne oblikujejo.
And in the lab, you can manipulate, you can take some of the tags out of the DNA.
In v laboratoriju lahko z različnimi posegi določene oznake iz DNA odstranite.
And then the descendants of these blind fish, they have eyes.
In potem imajo potomci slepih rib oči.
This is a completely different view.
To je popolnoma drugačna stvar.
For me, this is God putting in us mechanisms to adapt fast to new environments.
Za mene to predstavlja Boga, ki v nas daje mehanizme, ki nam omogočajo hitro prilagajanje različnim okoliščinam.
The information doesn't need to appear by chance, by mutation.
Torej, informacije se ne rabijo pojavljati z mutacijami.
The information is already there, ready for use it when it's needed.
Informacije so že tukaj in so na voljo za uporabo, ko je to potrebno.
So all these discoveries have made people to think about the theory of evolution.
Torej, vsa ta odkritja so pripeljala do tega, da so ljudje razmišljali o teoriji evolucije.
And many evolutionary scientists are thinking about this and they are asking themselves,
In mnogi evolucionistični znanstveniki raziskujejo to in se sprašujejo.
this is a Nature paper from 2014.
Gre za članek iz leta 2014.
All these authors are evolutionist scientists.
Vsi ti avtori, ki so našteti, so
And
evolucionisti
they are asking, does evolutionary theory need a rethink?
in postavljajo vprašanje, ali teorija evolucije potrebuje ponovni razmislek.
And according to the paper, the answer is yes.
In glede na članek je odgovor da.
And I have another paper, more recent one, this
Še
is
imam en
2022,
novejši članek iz leta 2022,
and it's saying the same thing.
ki govori isto stvar.
Do we need a new theory of
Ali
evolution?
potrebujemo novo teorijo evolucije?
So they are thinking about this.
Torej, preprosto razmišljajo o tem.
The problem is that science is forcing itself to work within the naturalism framework,
Težava je v tem, da se je znanost prisilila delovati znotraj okvira naturalizma.
they don't allow any supernatural explanation, like God-related explanation
Ki ne dovoljuje nobenih nadnaravnih pojasnil, kot recimo Bog,
for the origin of development of life.
ali pa ko gre za razvoj življenja.
So they are rejecting the conventional explanation, but they are trying to find new natural explanations.
Zato ti znanstveniki zavračajo tisto prvotno pojasnilo teorije evolucije in poskušajo najti novo pojasnilo.
And I want to finish with a quote from Francis Crick.
In končala bom z navedkom Francisa Cricka,
He's one of the discoverers of the DNA structure and he got a Nobel Prize for it.
ki je eden od tistih, ki so odkrili strukturo DNA, za kar je dobil tudi Nobelovo nagrado.
And he says,
In pravi,
and you can read it,
biologi morajo neprestano imeti v mislih, da to, kar vidijo, ni bilo načrtovano, ustvarjeno, ampak se je razvilo.
okay, think about this.
Razmislite o tem.
Biologists must constantly remind themselves
Torej, biologi se morajo ves čas spominjati,
that what they are saying in biology
da to, kar vidijo v biologiji,
was not designed.
ni bilo
It
načrtovano,
couldn't be designed.
da ni moglo biti
It's not
načrtovano.
designed.
Ni
I don't
načrtovano.
want it to be designed
Jaz ne želim, da bi bilo načrtovano.
because what they see look a lot like it was designed, really
Zato,
well designed.
ker na drugi strani to, kar vidijo, je videti, kot da je bilo načrtovano.
So they have to auto-convince themselves.
Zato se morajo prepričati sami sebe.
It evolved, it evolved, it evolved.
Torej, razvilo se je.
I don't think this is a scientific behavior.
Mislim, da to ni znanstveno vedenje.
I think the evidence is very clear.
Mislim, da je arrogantnost tukaj jasna.
So I don't agree with Francis Crick at all.
Ne strinjam se z Francisom Crickom,
And
nikakor.
my conclusion is a different one
Moj sklep je povsem drugačen
that you can find in the Bible in one of my favorite verses.
in najdete ga lahko v Svetem pismu, v eni od mojih najljubših vrstic.
Psalm 139:14.
V psalmu 139, 14,
We are wonderfully made.
ki pravi, da smo čudovito ustvarjeni.
From our tiny cells to our entire body.
Vse od naših najbolj drobnih celic do celotnega telesa.
We are wonders of engineering.
Smo čudo inženirstva.
And when you look at it with an open mind,
In ko pogledate na to z odprtim umom,
you know,
veste,
my soul knows this.
moja duša to ve,
I was designed,
da sem bila ustvarjena,
I was created,
načrtovana
and I'm loved.
in ljubljena.
And you too.
In vi tudi.
Thank you.